Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video. For today, I'll be taking a look at the Deadeye and their updated / touched up elite specialization, and move on to their weapon, the rifle, and utilities and traits. But we will first take a look at the profession mechanics for the Deadeye. So the main thing that was changed was not the Deadeye's mark, but instead it was Malice. In the old iteration of Malice, this would give you a % damage increase depending on the amount of Malice you had. This will still work in terms of a damage modifier, but not outright. Also, it does not generate on its own while in combat. You actually have to use skills that cost initiative to gain a stack of Malice, and you have a chance of gaining a second stack of Malice if the damage skill that you used critically strikes. So there is some playstyle with precision and getting those crits off. So with Malice, the skills that will consume Malice to gain a damage bonus will be your sneak attacks, which I will, or your ambush skills when you're stealthed, which I will go into in a little bit. Other than Malice, the Deadeye's mark pretty much stayed the same, but the stolen skills that you get when you use Deadeye's mark have been updated to compensate for the changes to Malice, because the stolen skills used to scale off of the amount of Malice you had. I don't think they do anymore. I think they've just been buffed a little bit to still feel useful. So that is the profession, or those are the profession mechanic changes. Let's move on to the rifle. For the most part, your base non-kneeling rifle skills stayed the same. I was kind of hoping that one or two of them would have gotten a little bit of a buff, but overall I think they're really fine in terms of the bread and butter is in your kneeling stance for your rifle skills. So for the first ability, nothing really changed, nor for the second or the third. However, you do have a new fourth ability. This replaces Death's Judgment, and I will get into where Death's Judgment is in a second. But instead of Death's Judgment, you have Sniper's Cover. Some of you might remember that this title of Sniper's Cover used to be a trait. They removed that trait in place of another one, which I will once again get into in a little bit. But for this skill, it creates a mini smoke screen where it will block projectiles coming from enemies. One thing I will say is that it's a really cool skill in terms of its thematic use and function, creating like a barrier almost. In its actual execution and in combat, I have found it to be a little clunky in terms of melee fighters. When you're going up against someone who emphasizes melee and is always in your face, you can't do anything with this. It's only useful when you're fighting against someone who has projectiles. One thing that I would recommend is to perhaps give this skill some more personal defense, to where when you use it, you get a boon. I was thinking Aegis, but I was like, it's kind of too strong, and it relies, in my opinion, that ties more to the Guardian. Then I was thinking Protection, which might be a good boon. I think Protection would be a nice boon to have for reduced damage. But then I was also thinking of Vigor to increase your endurance regeneration, to get you to be able to dodge more often and evade those melee attacks. So if I were to change one thing for this skill, I would say add Vigor to this skill. So when you use this, you put up the projectile barrier and also gain like 5 seconds of Vigor. That's pretty much everything with that. One thing that has changed is the stealth attack / ambush skill. This has turned into Death's Judgment, which used to be the fourth skill. It is a hard-hitting attack, and it consumes your Malice to do more damage. That's pretty much it. It works fairly similarly to the old Death's Judgment. So yeah, I will give more in-depth review after I go over all the skills. So moving on to the utility skills. Malicious Restoration. This will just transfer 3 conditions to a marked target. For Shadow Gust, the cooldown was reduced from 45 seconds to 30 seconds, which is really nice. I would often use this skill even before the overhaul, and the cooldown was a little lengthy. Shadow Flare does 50% increased damage to a marked target now. Binding Shadow will also knock down and immobilize the marked target at the same time. And for Mercy, you gain 2 initiative per malice stack instead of 1. So that's nice. No changes to Shadow Meld. I do think Shadow Meld is a really nice skill. It's a fun skill as an elite, just like straight up reveal or remove reveal and gain stealth. And it has 2 stacks ammo, and it's a fairly low cooldown, 45 seconds. Not too bad. So those are the utility skills. Moving straight on into the traits. This is where your playstyle is more defined and how they have updated these traits. For your minors, we have Malicious Intent. You gain a stack of malice when you mark a target or you use a heal skill. Collateral damage, it's more AoE damage when your marked target dies, and it also blinds enemies around your marked target. One in the chamber, you gain a random stolen skill when you use a cantrip. Silent Scope. This used to be Sniper's Cover. Sniper's Cover has been removed and put as a skill for that barrier. Silent Scope, it will allow you to stealth when you dodge while using a rifle. And if you're in your kneeling position, the cooldown is reset. Also, you gain a plus 20% critical chance when using rifle skills. Payback. This is interesting. It will reduce the recharge by 10% for your healing, utility, and elite skills when Renewing Gaze is activated. And Renewing Gaze is a minor, so you'll always have this. Deadeye's Mark recharges if your mark is defeated. So this focuses on killing marked targets quickly. Premeditation, which was the sneak peek trait that we got, which increases your concentration by 180 and also gives you some bonus damage. Maleficent 7, I don't think this one was changed at all. It's pretty standard increased malice cap. Be a cook or be killed, I don't think this one was changed at all either. And Fire for Effect, this was buffed and it now applies Fury along with Might. I'd say the bottom line is more for boons, middle line is more for killing your marked targets quickly, and the top row is for situations where you know you'll have one target marked for a longer period of time. So those were all the overhaul and changes. Hello, Raptor in the background. For the Deadeye, I will now switch over to some gameplay and just give my final thoughts / review of the overall flow and play style of the new Deadeye. Okay, everyone, we are now going to be entering the world of opinions. So please take my words with a grain of salt. Okay, the Deadeye. I remember being slightly confused as to why they would be revamping the Deadeye. Not necessarily like revamping, more just like touching things up a bit. I don't think it was as drastic as, say, the Mesmer, where their illusions and phantasms were completely redone. But I was a little confused, but I was pleased that they were continuing this, what seems to be almost a tradition of looking back at a class, or in this case, an elite spec, and just working out the kinks. So I was glad they were doing that. And when we got a little bit of the hints in the blog post, it looked promising. It looked really, really promising, but I kept an open mind, and I didn't judge things too heavily, mostly because it was a sneak peek, and you can't really judge a whole book based on the first 2 chapters. I guess it's like, don't judge a book by its cover analogy, but you guys get what I mean, I hope. I wasn't taking things too harshly or criticizing them too harshly. When it came to the patch day, I was very excited for underwater combat changes and the Deadeye. I did underwater combat first, and then I worked my way to the Deadeye, and I remember my very first time playing this new revamped Deadeye, and I did not like it. I thought it was so clunky. And that's given. That's going to be a given because it was so new, especially with Death's Judgment being one of its core skills being transferred to a stealth attack and requiring stealth, and it was a shock. And I didn't like it because of that change. And I think some people might have also shared my reaction. And that's kind of normal. If something is completely different and forcing you to change the way you play, you might not like it because you might have grown accustomed to it. That said, after I've played it for a couple more days, every so often, I've started to like it more and more. I do think that the requirement for stealth to deliver your hardest hitting attack is a little clunky at times, mostly because of revealed. It's sometimes difficult to keep track of how much longer you have revealed on you because you always have to be looking at a smaller icon. So sometimes you'll be activating a skill that activates stealth, but you're revealed, so you can't. So it kind of is a little hard to weave all the skills together. But then again, on the flip side of that, I looked at this change as more of a skill cap requirement. I feel like it's making the Deadeye a bit more niche in terms of its skill requirement to play it effectively, and I like that. I think with Guardian, let's take Guardian and Necromancer for example, Firebrand and Scourge, they're very easy classes to play and pick up. But for the Thief, and more specifically the Deadeye, with this change, it's making it slightly more difficult, but keeping the deadliness, which I love. And I almost fell into the trap of being a hypocrite, saying that Scourge and Firebrand were too easy, and then complaining that Deadeye was harder. But then I removed myself from the situation. I was like, I'll give it up for them. It is challenging, but it pays off. And I think that pretty much sums up my experience with the Deadeye. I think the skills might need a little bit of tuning, just a little bit, in terms of damage potential. And I still think Death's Judgment at times, I'll have a max stack of Maliks, but I'll only hit for like 4,000. And I was like, oh, it felt a little underwhelming. Something might happen. There might be a couple bugs still. I don't know. But yeah, I'd say overall, Deadeye is a bit more challenging personally for my play style. And I like that. But I'm getting better. So that was the Deadeye overview and thoughts video. It wasn't super analytically crazy with like numbers and stuff, just my overall feel of the class and the spec. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Subscribe for more content. Leave like the video if you liked it. Don't leave. And comment down below about your thoughts on the new Deadeye if you've played it. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye everyone. Mwah.